Good. I'm just,
Okay. Yeah, go right ahead. You're good to go.
I'm just gonna test this real quick. Let me know if you can hear the sound.
Okay.
There's things I'm not doing
Yep.
well with my profile, but some of the things that I'm doing
All good?
right. I
Yep.
have a
All
good
good.
picture. If I do
All
say
right.
something,
So I said it better in the video than I'm going to be able to hear. So I'm just gonna play the video. Cool. So this is interview hacking, the fastest way to actually get hired. And as an introduction, I'm just going to jump into so who this is for, and the short of it is for the three of you that kind of shared your experiences. I think you're in the right place. In the next 30 or so minutes, you're probably going to judge me. Ramona. I know Ramona likes me because she came back. This might be repetitive for her, but I have improved it since I think she heard it last. So it's been tweaked a little bit. I don't want you to leave wondering, is this for me? Like, who is this set out for? And there's two general audiences. One is recent college grads, but what I've noticed is as I've kind of had this conversation with people, more and more experienced people who are either switching careers, or one of the great things about technology is you can jump from kind of different parts of the stack. But sometimes that can be a challenge. And if you're, a senior software engineer, how do you translate that senior experience? Like, do you have to start over? Some people think you do, like that kind of thing. So we're going to get into kind of specifically how to present that so that you can put your best foot forward. So if you're ready, say I'm ready. I think everyone's on mute, which is probably good.
Ready.
Okay. So my goal here, in 30 minutes, I want to convince you that interview hacking is the first domino of a series. This is a foundational skill. When you master it, everything else will fall into place. You'll get your first data role and every role thereafter. So hacking isn't just for code. It isn't just something for coders. In fact, it's a mindset. And that mindset of a hacker can help you reboot your career and reach your potential without wasting time. So who am I? I'm Rho Lall. I'm a full stack data scientist. I'm a senior analytics engineer at Purple, the mattress company. I have practical experience in several industries across a multitude of technologies. I have a bachelor's in economics. I have a master's in data analytics. And I've been able to help several junior analysts break into more technical roles. And I'm currently helping several data professionals advance in their careers. But starting out, I didn't have any of these advantages. In fact, it was a few short years ago, and I was very much in the position, trying to find myself, asking the very same question, this is a passion, this data thing, I believe it's a passion. How do I make this work? I had the skills and the talent, but I couldn't seem to translate that into a job. I spent hours upon hours sending out resumes only to hear crickets in response. And I found it really frustrating in 2013 to read about this data science talent gap, and to hear about it again in 2017, because I felt like I was doing something wrong. I had the skills and the talent, but no one seemed to want to hire me. And spoiler alert, we're still hearing about the data science talent gap in 2024. And when I say I have the skills and talent, I really did. I won a data science competition. I used natural language processing to solve real world problems at work, but no one cared. And I couldn't get an interview, let alone an offer. And so I struggled, I was frustrated. And so this presentation, I want to share with you how I overcame my own inexperience. So there's a lot of people who dabble with data science as a hobby, and I was one of them. I had a good job. I was working predominantly in Excel, but I didn't want to do data on the side, and I set an intention to make it a career. And so I tried everything. I researched each company and tailored my resume to each listing. I filled out applications night after night. I completed 2 analyst internships. I did cold outreach on LinkedIn. I attended local data science meetups and conferences. I won a data science competition. I even mailed my resume out to local businesses. And then life happened. 2016 was going to be my breakout year. I was sitting in a parking lot outside my doctor's office, and I called my wife. And she prattled on about, I can't remember what, but after a few minutes, she stopped, getting ready to hang up. She asked how to go at the doctor. And I said, the cancer's back. And she said, that's not funny. And I replied, I'm not joking. In 2014, I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was hard with a young baby. But now that young baby was 3, and he had a baby brother. And I'm not afraid of dying, but I cried when I realized all I would leave them was a goodbye. They wouldn't know me, they wouldn't remember me. They would only know how hard it was to grow up without me. And the thing is, the cancer wasn't the real challenge. We all carry stuff, right? That's part of the deal. That's part of life. We all get something. I learned that from Kim Smith. He's diagnosed with Parkinson's. He worked at Goldman Sachs and was diagnosed with Parkinson's and had to kind of scale back his life and ended up as a, transition to be a professor at BYU, which is how I met him. I learned that from him. It's just, we all get something, right? But it wasn't, cancer wasn't the struggle. The struggle was the cancer bills. 10K would have solved everything for me, just an extra 10K. And I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of tripping over what I saw as small problems. And on top of that, I felt like an imposter. I didn't know enough. I didn't know of machine learning. I didn't know of Python. I didn't know enough R. I didn't know Tableau. So I redoubled my effort, filling out applications, customizing my resume to each job description, but I had nothing to show for my trouble. And then one day, I was sharing my troubles with my good friend, Dane. He said to me, if you aren't getting callbacks, there's something wrong with your resume. And that was my first aha moment. And it actually happened right there in this room. I was standing right there when it happened. And I realized right then, the job of my resume is just like all these things came flooding right at that moment. The job of my resume is to get callbacks and nothing more. It's not supposed to sell them on hiring me. It's not an index of everything in my job history. It's not a substitute for an interview. And so that's when I started the approach that became resume hacking, right? That's when I started looking at my resume like code. I broke it down into its functional parts, and I tested each of those parts to see if it was functioning. And I found the broken parts, and I iterated until I found solutions that worked, which led me to this framework. Right, that was the cornerstone of this 100K offer ladder framework, which kind of breaks out the hiring process. It's pretty common sense. This isn't rocket science. This is overwhelming common sense, but it's really helpful because it allows me to laser focus my effort on what's not working and to see it clearly. So I broke that interview process into its key parts. Resumes get attention, screens get interviews, interviews get offers, and offers get the job. So what were the results? I got more callbacks, more recruiter screens, more technical interviews, more hiring interviews, more offers. And when I envisioned the type of work I wanted to be doing, this was it. And so now I am a full stack data scientist. I work specifically as a senior analytics engineer at Purple. I have a career, not just a job, and I do meaningful work that I enjoy. And so I get paid to deliver data products, to assume wisely, and to combine assumptions with data to drive insight. And so the core, when I want to talk about, 3 things. So these are 3 kind of insights, aha moments that I've gained from this framework. The first is how to discover your superhero origin story. The second is how to stand out from the crowd with a resume that pops. And the third is how to know in your bones you have the experience that they're looking for. And so jumping into that, discovering your superhero origin story. This is a quote I pulled from my personal journal. I'm going to squeak by. Whoever hires me is going to go out on a limb by taking a risk on me. And this question was my nemesis. What knowledge and skill am I missing that makes other candidates more attractive? And it was born out of this reoccurring pattern. I believe I don't know enough. The recruiter agreed. They went with someone who had more experience. I was right, confirming my bias that I needed to learn more. And I'm good at that. So I did it. And that was my pattern, right? I would get rejected, I'd go back, another project, another book, I'd tweak my resume, I'd create more experience. And it was this repetitive cycle. And then one day, a friend of mine, as I was networking, right, trying to get opportunities, one of my friends worked at USAA. He recommended me for his team. And I knew from talking to him, they were really hurting for people because they had a mountain of work to churn through. I interviewed with his boss. They flew me down for the final interview. And this was my moment. And I didn't get the job. And when I called my friend, he told me his boss said, I don't know what happened. He wasn't the same guy that I talked to on the phone. And so what changed? In that final interview, I emphasized that I was humble and willing to learn from him and that he could kind of mold me into exactly what he needed, that he could be my mentor. And I realized he didn't want to be a mentor. He wanted results. He wanted a solution to his problem. He didn't want to be a solution to my problem. And that was when I had my second aha moment, which is the two questions you need to answer in an interview. Can you solve my problem? Do I want to work with you? And so it's your job to make their life easier. It's your job to take work off of their plate, not add to it. So start now, start in the interview, start by making the interview easier for them. Help them make the right decision. Don't wait for them to ask the right questions. They might not know how. Help them take work off their plate, help them make the right decision. And so how do you do that? Ask them what their biggest challenge is. Play to your strengths. So if you're not like amazing at SQL, you're not going to pull a fast one. If you're new to SQL, they're going to know. I don't think that's so much an issue here, but whatever that thing is, right? That you're self-conscious about, don't worry about that. Play to your strengths. Paint a picture for them of how you can solve their problem. And so what does that look like? For me, my superpower is code review. I'm not super great at SQL, but I am really good at debugging code. Nasty spreadsheets, broken code, bad formulas, gross, ew, disgusting, nasty. I'm your guy. I'm a 10x thinker, and I can connect dots that are really far apart. Some other examples. There's a lot of project management experience out there, and I think it's desperately needed in the data world. If you have project management experience, lean into that, because I think there's a notice, like people know that it's needed, and it's usually overlooked in favor of technical talent. So if you have that, I think it's a real boon. And then there's subject matter expertise. It could be in the industry or the company. And lastly, this one also is largely overlooked, ownership. The ability to communicate, you can hand off problems to me. Vague, ambiguous, hairy problems, I can handle it. So know your superpower. Show them how you can save the day. And that ownership piece is probably of this section here, probably the best nugget of this section. Vague, ambitious, hairy, that's the job. And your response is, I got this. Do you need to know how? No, you don't. It's not a requirement. You'll figure it out. That's the job. But your superpower is how you go about figuring how to save the day. The what's going to change because that's part of the job. The what is constantly changing, but the how and the why is your unique value add that simply can't be copied. It's you, it's your superpower. So that's number one. Number two, how to stand out from the crowd with a resume that pops. So I'm going to play this video because it's going to do better than I am live. As we look through it, I want to point out three things. One, and actually, this is probably the biggest, like, forget everything else. Your current title is the marquee data point on your resume. Whatever role you're looking for, if your current role matches the role you're looking for, you're going to get interviews if you do nothing else on this list. But there's other things you can do, and I'm going to jump into that here.
There's things I'm not doing well with my profile, but some of the things that I'm doing right. I have a good picture, if I do say so myself. Keywords in the headline. And then I've also got these keywords, right? DBT, data modeling, analytics engineering. And then when you come to my experience, analytics engineer, business intelligence analyst. I realize I do have some experience, but if you've been promoted in your role, this is the way to do it, right? Show that progression. You come down here to Entrada. This looks really strong when you have this broken out like that. And they see, you don't have to tell them you were promoted. You show them, very visual. Also, you've heard this before, I'm sure. LinkedIn is not a resume. LinkedIn is also not a soapbox. Don't think of it as a pulpit at work. Think of it more as a perpetual conference. So if you've ever gone to a conference, socialized, like the Snowflake conference, Coalesce, any of these conferences where vendors are paying for alcohol and people are drinking and having a good time and schmoozing and socializing, that's the kind of vibe you want to bring to LinkedIn. Your profile, it's your circus. So represent who you are, right? If you're not super outgoing, don't present yourself as, life of the party, but relax a little bit, right? Take off the tie, unbutton your shirt, have fun on your LinkedIn profile. And there's a lot of things that you can do here. What is that? Debbie is awesome. Yep, Debbie is awesome. So if this looks good, right? If you're doing things right, and you're going to have to iterate, right? This is hacking. Changing one thing at a time, just seeing how the response works. And what you're going to measure is right here. How many of these recruiters are reaching out to you? And there's different degrees of quality. And I might, I can hear you saying, Rho, I don't have the years of experience that you have. And so there's not people reaching out to me. This started to happen even before I had the experience, because your outreach is not a reflection of your actual experience. It's a reflection of how you're presenting yourself. If you're targeting the right thing, recruiters don't know any better. They're not spending a ton of time looking at your resume. So this guy, he said Rho, but I bet you, there we go, Matt, right? This right here, bar graph Rho, this is some type of automation that he's using. And he basically targeted analytics engineers, which is why you want to have that keyword in that first position. And he's just, right, I'm not special, although it does make me feel a little special. So let's answer some of these. I'll tell you right now, that salary range is lower than I have been telling people. But again, at this point, what I'm doing is market research. Earlier in the week, we did marketing research around identifying a role to go after. And I specifically said, this is role research. This isn't finding out what salary you'll bear out in the market. The way that you figure that out is by going on these, just interviewing anywhere and everywhere and throwing some numbers out and seeing how people respond. This range isn't obscene. It's not obscenely low, but it's slightly lower than what I'm saying. And I'll say that to him. I'll be like, well, I was really looking for, this amount, 140 to 160. And that's high, in my opinion, probably. If there's someone that wants to pay me that, that's not a bad way to start out. It makes it really easy for them to disconnect, not interested. But this is really great. Even though he wrote bar graph Rho, this is really great. So I am curious. Oh, and here's another thing. This caught my eye. So he's got all this professional stuff, but I'm for sure going to talk to him about being a voice actor. I'm very curious what his phone demeanor is going to be like. I see you are a voice actor. This guy just looks like a sales guy, and I just mean that as a compliment. I like sales guys. Look at that guy. That guy's got guns. All right. Save to recruiter.
I think that's
Yeah,
the
I can tell that
end.
guy's good.
All right. So how do you get there? So this is a question I get asked all the time. So I said, you need to have whatever role you're targeting, right? That first bit of experience right here, whatever's here, that first title needs to match. And so how do you get the right title when you're in a different role? Well, if you can't get an internship, give yourself one. Start a consulting company, hire yourself, start a blog. Don't lie, but don't apologize for it either. Plenty of people have more than one job. So this is my blog, Assume Wisely. My most popular post is about using date diff in Snowflake. Other than that, no one reads my blog. But starting out, recruiters asked me about it all the time because back in the day, when I worked at Entrada, before I got this job, Assume Wisely was the first. I set it up so it was the first thing that showed up on my profile, and it said business at the time. It said business intelligence analyst, and I was a business intelligence analyst at my blog. I didn't sugarcoat that. And as I got good at answering their questions, I moved forward in the interview process. And so I already said results, right? You're not going to pull a fast one on the interviewer. What you are going to do is make sure that any algorithms they're using sort you into the right pile. And achievements, that change, that one change, just changing the name. I made that change at 10 o'clock at night. I woke up the next morning with an outreach from Indeed for an interview. And within days, I had 2 more interviews. So that's just one piece. You also want to focus on skills, right? When you look at the top here, I have analytics engineer, keyword, but then I also have tools, right? I have skills in here. MarTech is on there as well. Okay. Lastly, how to know in your bones you have the experience they're looking for, even when they tell you otherwise. So this is the final big aha. Are we doing on time? 7:11. Okay. This is the final aha I gained from countless interviews. And so I did the things that I talked about here. I got the knowledge, I implemented, I iterated, I deconstructed my resume, I hacked it, I started getting callbacks. And eventually I hacked my way through the callbacks, and eventually I hacked my way through the initial screens, and eventually I hacked through the technical interviews, and eventually I got to the point where I was consistently making it to the final interview, but I didn't get an offer. And I always asked for feedback, and the feedback was always the same. It's not you, you were great. We decided to go with someone with more experience. And I took that feedback and I redrafted my resume, and I took more courses and I worked on more projects and I created more experience that I could talk about. And I interviewed a lot, and the feedback was always the same. Weeks became months and months became years. And it's only in retrospect that I realized I was in the self-perpetuating doom cycle. I was actually using education as an escape because I wasn't getting the results that I needed. And I'm a great learner. I love learning. When I got that feedback that I needed more experience, I'd already bought into my imposter syndrome. They were just confirming what I already believed. I didn't know enough. And so I fell back on that old pattern. take another course, read another book, do another project, get another dopamine hit. And it felt good. And I checked the box and I was able to feel like I was working towards my goal, but I wasn't, because I wasn't getting the results. And it's weird to talk about something like learning in terms of being a negative feedback loop, but in this case, it absolutely is. It's a form of analysis paralysis. And I was on that hamster wheel and I wasn't getting anywhere. And then I was watching a documentary, and I learned about this pump worker from the city of Chicago. His name's Fraser Robinson. And so he tended boilers at a water filtration plant. And you probably have no idea who Fraser Robinson is. But if you Google him, you've heard of his baby girl. As a Black man with MS, he could have never worked a day in his life. He could have collected benefits. He could have succumbed to his disease, been depressed about it, but he didn't. He spent his life being passed over for promotions. And that was a source of deep frustration for him. And that drove him to light a fire under his children, and he pushed them really hard. I looked at my kids and I knew exactly what he felt because I was feeling it. And I decided then, if this is what I have to do, then I'll have to do it, but I'm not going to quit. I'm going to take his example and I'm just going to keep at it if I have to just fail for the rest of my life. And it was from that process of banging my head against the wall at each step that I developed the 100K offer ladder. And so the first step, if you aren't getting callbacks, then there's something wrong with your resume. Resumes get attention. Technical interviews assess skills. Interviews answer the 2 key questions. And the offer is where you hammer out the details. We already talked about my results, right? But how did it work? How does it work? It's in the ability to pinpoint exactly what's wrong. If you're not getting callbacks, the problem isn't your experience. It's your outreach, your resume. If you're not getting past the initial screen, that's a confidence problem. Not getting past the technical interview, that's a skill issue. But when you get to the interview, you have the skill and experience they're looking for, which bears repeating because this is a hard lesson to accept. And if you're my people, which everyone here and anyone listening to if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm willing to bet you're my people. Like you're a nerd like me. You need to hear this. If you're in the interview, your experience is attractive. You have the skills for the job. They wouldn't have called you in otherwise. They're busy. They have better things to do. They're professionals. Why are they wasting their time with someone who doesn't have attractive experience? The answer is they're not. Maybe you don't have the best experience, but your experience is attractive and they believe you're capable of doing the job. The purpose of the interview is to answer the 2 questions, and neither of them have to do with experience. And this is the transformation piece, because it's not just about results. The screens, the interviews, the offers, the job, results follow. But what happens when they turn you down? How do you not get sucked into that doom cycle? Right? It's having this knowledge and realizing, regardless of what they say, like I realized, looking back at those 2 questions, can you solve my problem? Do I want to work with you? Not everyone's going to want to work with me. I can live with that. Right? So the next time they tell you, we decided to go with someone with a bit more experience, well, now you know better. And now you are better. You're going to feel self-doubt, right? If you're like me, again, I'm willing to bet you are, you don't need to be the boss, right? You enjoy your own company. Some of us call that being introverted. You can live with discomfort. You just don't want to be wrong. And my paycheck, my title, my peers tell me different, but I still feel like an imposter. And I don't believe that can be overcome, but it can be outsmarted. Because now with this framework, I have an objective scale I can use as a measuring stick. So my question to you is, do you think this would work for you? It's impossible to cover everything. in the time that we have. And I feel like I've gone over already, but I tried to cover as much as possible without derailing too far in the weeds, which I'm very prone to do. Um, but invariably, the question that I know someone's asking is, what are the specific steps I need to take? And I've purposefully kept this about strategy, and here's why. Something you might not know about me from LinkedIn is I grew up in a New York deli. And once I was old enough to reach the counter, which is how old I am in this picture, my dad put me to work and taught me to make sandwiches. And I had to make them right, and I had to make them fast, and I would get mayo everywhere. And my dad taught me to take care of the edges, and the middle would take care of itself. He taught me the strategy first, not the tactics. And so I learned this the hard way too. When I first started teaching these ideas, I focused on the tactics, what specific steps you need to do. And it was maybe not terrible, but let's say it was just less effective. So I focused our time here on the strategy. Now, if you're hearing this and this strategy makes sense for you, then we can get, right? Now we can get into tactics. And that's why I've put together several resources for you. You've already seen one of them. I excerpted a video clip from a course that I put together. It's called the 7x7 Interview Challenge. The goal is to get 7 interviews in 7 days. It's all about really nailing that resume to get past that first hurdle of, I'm doing all this work, I'm filling out applications, and all I'm hearing is crickets. So if you can get to that first step where people start calling you back because your resume is good, that's a huge first step. And so this course is all about getting to that point. You can get the details at the link, and it's free. It's free. It's very comprehensive. There's a lot of stuff in there. It's a 7-day course. No one's finished it in 7 days yet. There's a lot in there, and that's because you're welcome. I don't know, because I wanted it to be, because it was necessary, and it's the best I have, and I really like it. It's a really good course, and that's it. So it's open for questions. We've got like another 10 minutes. It looks like, I think, but if people have questions and want to go longer, I'm not opposed, unless Pat is.
No, we're good. We're open for questions. I'll definitely stop the recording in a little bit, but if people got questions, please, by all means, let's talk it out. I think, yeah, go ahead. Questions? I'll add one kind of question and comment that I really like your take on the imposter syndrome stuff, because that was really a big thing for me as well, and something that I've been still fighting too for a long time. I've been working in the industry now for 20 years, and I still feel like I have imposter syndrome a lot of the times when I go and talk. Now, I haven't done a lot of interviews recently, but whenever I go to a new company or anything else, I'm always like, should I be here? Should I be doing this? Should I be managing this team? And I have to remind myself I've done it a few times, so just to get used to it.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think people need to hear that. I remember one of the I can't remember the name of the building, but I remember the room we were in. Pat went around the room just like he did here, and he asked everybody, like, so what do you do? And I was so self-conscious of the fact that I was basically an Excel analyst. I knew a little bit of SQL, but it would be a few months before I had my first SQL interview and completely bomb it. And so when it got to me, I said, I take data from here and put it over there. And Pat laughed so hard at that. And I knew I was a kindred spirit, but I was just like, it was hard. It was super hard. And I think it's important to realize everybody has that.
And I'm still
And
laughing
it doesn't
now,
go
too,
away.
about
It doesn't
it.
go
Yeah.
away. It doesn't go away.
No, I still laugh at it now. And it's very true too when you say you move data from here to there. When we boil down the technical things we do as database people or data people or anything else, a lot of the times that's it. I mean, one of the favorite things that I used to learn from when we put on this event before, and what Alton and many of the others used to always say, is that 80% of data science, and you've all heard this before, is cleaning data. It's not actually running the models or anything else. It's getting data in the right place. It's getting it in the right place. It's getting it to the right phase. It's getting it to where it needs to be. So a lot of us, a friend of mine uses the term data janitor. Well, a lot of us are just data janitors. We're not, analytics people or anything else. We're just trying to clean data just so we can actually do something fun with it. And people need
Right.
to realize that is that we're all doing it. I guarantee you, everyone's fighting CSVs and piped limited and all these things. You're all fighting it. So there's no reason to not say it. It's what it is. We all do it.
Oh, go ahead, Laura. You raised your hand. I'm gonna comment after you speak.
Oh, Ro, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight, and really for in general for preparing this presentation, and for even making a a website or a program 7x7. But so my question is, why did you, okay, so you had your struggles and then you overcame them, you had all these insights, but what motivated you, what inspired you to share them with the world, with the rest of us? And especially you said some of it is free, like, so you didn't make your school of how to succeed. Like, where is it
Right.
coming from?
So I was, it's legitimately, I know how hard it was for me and how painful it was. And I made the course I wish I had then. And I say that there's right, as I was kind of learning how to put all this stuff together, one of the things you learn about is email marketing, and I mean there's a paid component eventually, right? Like there's a ton of free stuff, there's a paid part, right? But you don't need the paid part to get the benefits. Like, you can get everything for free, but if you want more, there's more that's paid. So right, there's a paid component. I'm not like, tools cost money, right? I got to pay for it, right? But in the courses that I've taken, there's this very key lesson where the guy was basically saying, make sure your audience can afford what you're doing. And he literally used the example of, don't necessarily market to people that are looking for work, because they just don't have the money to pay for stuff because they're struggling to find jobs. And even with that, like, I couldn't not do this. I actually tried to pursue some different type of kind of like a different information product for some, like for marketing people, like CMOs, or to create some type of product potentially for the type of people that would hire me, right? And I just couldn't do it. And so it's very much a passion project. I don't intend it to be like, it's this, I like coding. I like having a black screen staring back at me on Monday mornings. So this is very much just like a passion project, something I'm doing to kind of give back. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's basically why.
Okay, thank you. It does. It's and maybe you feel like by giving back, like you strengthen your, like you cement your own knowledge, you solidify it.
As I'm doing it, I think so to expand on that,
Like it takes, like when you teach someone else, then you learn better yourself.
something I've learned from Pat is at some point, it's about community and investing in your community, and people recognize individuals who invest in the community, right? Pat said a few times he has never, like, he doesn't fill out applications for his new offers. He talks about going to Maggleby's or some Italian place and like sketching things out on a napkin.
Yes,
right? Because he's invested so much. Like, everyone in Utah knows Pat, right? Because he's invested in the community and has given so much to the community. So I think at some point you realize that it's not just about getting work done from 9 to 5. It's about investing in your community. And second, I do think this is foundational to other things. I think the data community struggles with PowerPoint. Right? We're smart, but in being able to communicate in a way that is persuasive and incites action, I think is lacking. And so I do see a next level course once you have a job, right? Once this is done, because this is very much designed to succeed. And so people will move into and have jobs. And the people, my peers, right? I'm also making stuff to help them be better communicators. Because I think we're nerds, right? We're not cheerleaders. We're not the football team. Like our strength isn't in working as a team to communicate, and like we are very much in our own space. And so overcoming that, I think it's our strength. We need to embrace it, but I think there's places where we can be better at communicating. And it's pretty evident looking at some resumes that like we struggle with communication.
Thank you for that.
To make sure I clarify, it's macaroni grill.
Macaroni
yes,
grill.
Yeah, and yes, honestly, what you mentioned there, and I was going to bring that up too, is that another great reason, and Laura, you mentioned it too, is that teaching someone helps you to learn. I always say that. I tell people to present all the time because it helps you to learn something as well. But the other key part is community. What Ro mentioned is that the more you're in the community, the more you are prepared for things when something happens to you, layoffs, different changes, anything that goes differently. When you're part of a community, it can make all the difference in the world. If Rho said tomorrow, if he posts on LinkedIn, I was laid off or something else, or if something happened, I would be reaching out to him, or somebody else in the community would be, and say, hey, maybe we've got this position or we've got this thing, because you're known in the community. And that's what makes the difference, being out there. And I understand most of us are introvert, don't want to do that. I know that. I have a whole presentation designed around that. But the point is you definitely need to think about that as you move forward, because community is really where you get your jobs in the future. So yeah. Chad had a question, it looks like.
Yeah, I was just curious. I'd like to get Ro's opinion on an experience that I had with an interview. Like in so in user experience, lots of the job recs right now ask for like a ridiculous amount of experience
Yes.
right off the bat, like 3+, 4+, 5+ years of experience
for like an internship.
Yeah, even for an internship, or
Right.
like even a mid-level or like entry-level job. I'm curious, like I guess the things that you talked about here applies to that, right? Like you're saying to like, even though like if the job is asking for, like, let's say I'm a junior level transitioning into a senior level role, I could still see myself applying to a position like that, like even though I feel like the job rec is asking for something that might be a little challenging for me to achieve, but I can still see myself performing in a function like that, like growing into that role. The reason that I had an interesting incident with a recruiter, like an HR recruiter. Like I applied to a senior level UX designer position, and I think he saw something interesting in my resume, and we had like a interview scheduled, phone interview. And then I guess he was trying to like gauge how much experience that I have, because I have all this like finance type experience, and then I transitioned into the UX field. So I catered my resume only to I discussed the UX type things that I did in my previous roles.
That makes sense.
And then kind of have that bridge. But then during the interview, as soon as he like kind of, I guess, figured out that I might not have, let's say, around 5 years of only like UX like experience, and then it just went south. And yeah, that call ended abruptly, and it was just like a weird call. Turned out to be a weird call. Like I'm just curious, like how would you handle a situation like that? Like, I mean, I just felt like I never had an opportunity to like kind of, I don't know, just talk
Sure.
about my experience in that during that interview.
Sure. So thinking about 2 interviews. So one, I've had that interview. I've had that. I know exactly what you're talking about because I've had that interview multiple times. They're going to care less if you've been able to do something for 5 years as much as you can do it now. That's been for the most, like, and this is to a certain extent, you can take charge of the interview and ask the questions and find out, like, what are you trying to solve for? I saw Ramona waving. I'm not sure who she was waving at. I don't know if she's trying to get my attention or not. She'll come off mute if she needs to say something. But to answer your question, I'll tell you a story. In the course, you'll see kind of like my strategy for interviewing and getting interviews. I'm going to skip how I got to this interview, but needless to say, I was woefully underqualified for this position. And it was very obvious to me going into the interview that I was woefully underqualified. And if you ask me why I applied, it's because it was a 1-button application on LinkedIn. I clicked the button and I said, yeah, sure. And they called me back. And the first question they said to me was, why did you apply for this job? Because you're clearly not qualified. And while I didn't do a ton of research before I clicked the button, I did a ridiculous amount of research after I clicked the button. And I had a really good answer. And that answer, if I come back to this piece right here, know your superpower, right? I leaned into this. I said, you're right, like the technical skills that you're talking about, nope, I don't have those. But what I do have is an uncanny ability to connect dots that are really far apart. And if you kind of like, so I've consulted with businesses like yours, and they've kind of discussed their problems with me, and I've been able to identify and connect dots that no one else could connect. And it's because I have ADHD and my brain's all over the place. Usually it's useless. Sometimes it's funny, but sometimes the insight can be really valuable. And I'd be happy to consult your company for free. Just talk about like, what are the problems and like how, and I got a second interview for a position I wasn't qualified for. And I didn't go past that second interview, but you see the difference there? The reason I was able to do that is because I knew what I could do that no one else could. And I focused on that. I didn't focus on what I didn't have.
Gotcha.
And I have another story that's just like that, where the guy said, every single other person that has applied for this job has a PhD. And this is before I even started my master's. And he said, I didn't like any of them. That wasn't true. He'd made an offer to one of them and he didn't think the guy was going to accept. And he said, I would love it if you could just kill it, because then I could just hire you and we could get going. And I'm sure I could pay you a lot less than I was planning on paying them. And that was true. And I killed it. I had to learn some physics in order to do it. But it was a really fun interview. It was a coding project that I did, 3 or 4 hours. And I sent him the answer. I did the bonus stuff. I had a lot of fun doing it. He was a really cool guy. He was like a New York Jewish guy. And so I'm from New York. And so there was kind of like a connection there. And then he ghosted me. I was like, I killed it. What happened? Well, the guy turned around and he said, yeah, I'll take the job. And so I share those 2 stories to say, my people like us, we don't want to be wrong, and we definitely don't want to be called out. And so that fear of maybe presenting something and then someone calling you out on it is like, that is the worst. And if you know what your strengths are and you can speak to those strengths and you can show them how you can help them using your innate strengths and purpose and like why you do things like that's innately you, that's going to be very attractive. And that fear, I guess I've been there, done that, and I'm on good terms with both these guys, right? I still talk to the one. But yeah, I don't know if that sort of kind of goes around your question, but that's the most direct way I can answer it, because there's a lot of specifics to each case, but generally that's my answer. I don't know if chat's still there or not, if he fell off.
No, I'm here. Thanks for
Okay,
that
good.
response.
The other thing I'd say is that is everyone's asking. So part of that depends on the position. Data science positions are seen as more, they don't expect you to be a data scientist for 3 to 4 years, but they expect you to have some kind of relevant experience. Unless you're working for Google and it's an internship, then you're like a data science intern. But like if I want to be a data scientist, they expect me to be a data engineer for 2 to 3 years. And maybe you've done some machine learning, right? As an analytics engineer, not really an entry level position. They expect you to have some either business intelligence or software engineering or data engineering, something tangentially related. So it depends on what role you're looking for. But data analyst, data engineer, marketing analyst, a lot of these analyst roles and ETL roles, right? Anything that has SQL but the title's funky, those roles are all really great experience starting roles.
I like that you mentioned in there, Rho, too, the passion projects, and when you learned and you
Oh,
want
hi,
to learn that
Ramona.
technical skill or anything else, it really made a difference. Those passion projects make a big difference. Uday, I think you came off mute. I don't know if you're
Yes.
to. Did you have a question, Uday? I'll go ahead and mute him again. Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, so I relate with the first part of the journey, and then that's about it. I didn't get
Fair.
past. But I will say I do enjoy learning, and I was top of my class and etc. So I wanted to ask you, when people tell me, okay, you don't have enough experience, I can't get experience without the experience. So
Yes,
I'm not
yes.
motivated
Catch
on
22.
working on like toy projects, like okay, just like get some data. Just how, I mean, I'm more motivated to answer a real world to solve a real world problem, to get an answer for that, like when I have an audience, like somebody's depending, like somebody would benefit from my research, and then I would help them see and whatever. So when I do things for myself, like I'm like, how did you, like, I know you said you were your own business intelligence analyst for your own
Right,
blog. And I
right.
believe that, because yeah, you're curious. I have a project that could be in my neighborhood, about dogs. I'll just say it's about dogs.
Mhm.
But like, how did you, like, you just found like real world problems and then practiced your data skills on them, or how did
So
you
yeah,
motivate yourself?
I had an ETA, I had an Excel analyst job. I was basically, I think I was a data migration consultant, which isn't a very, it's not very clear what that is, but it's very similar to being a financial analyst. I did a lot of accounting analysis. So what I did, as I was learning to develop and I was learning machine learning, I took that development experience, I took that machine learning experience, and together with my coworker, we automated a bunch of stuff that was a very routine manual process. And that automation really created a leveraged output for what we're able to do. We also, data quality like the work quality, right? Mistakes, tracking mistakes and errors and things like that was very important. And so that's where I used the natural language processing to parse through emails. So we would get emails. It would go into it was set up in Google's ActionScript, which is like JavaScript. It would go in, it would pull out the emails, it would parse the body, it would pull it out, it would analyze the text, and it would pull out themes. Like, what are the most common problems that we're having? And we use that to drive down the errors, drive up the quality. And so the answer is, like, whatever you're doing, right? So one, if you're doing anything in Excel, you can do it in SQL and get SQL experience doing it. 90% of the work that you're doing, you might, I'll use the example, you might work at McDonald's, and your job, 80% of your job, or 100% of your job is fries. You cook the fries. That's all you do. But then you pull your laptop out and you do a bunch of data analytics on just the flow of the processes, and you work with the manager and you create a dashboard to, like, that's what you put on your resume. Not that you're good at frying fries. You put all that data analytics stuff, and it says, oh, you worked at McDonald's for 5 years. Yeah, you worked at McDonald's for 5 years frying French fries. But what's on your resume? The 3 bullet points that are on there are about the dashboard you built in the last 6 months, the SQL query that you ran in the last 6 months, right? That element of it. I don't think people care as much about you did something for 5 years as much as you're proficient at it. And so if you have the skill, they're not really going to care how long you've had the skill for. Unless there's a doubt, right? Unless you come across as not having the skill, which is a different issue. That should come out in the skill assessment.
I want to add one to this to try to help you too here, Laura. What we did, what Rho was talking about, competitions and things like that too, is that here in Utah, we created an air quality competition that we actually helped data scientists and everybody else. We gave them air quality data. We found it online and did other things. And then we tried to improve the air quality here in Utah with that data science. Now, we created the whole event and everything else, so it made it easier for people to do. But answering questions, like you said, you want to do something that actually has impact, or that has a reason or something else. Doing things like that, trying to improve some sort of situation with data, you can do that on all sorts of things. You can ask questions everywhere across the world of all sorts of things. And here's the key thing and again, this is the hard part or the scary part, go and present on it. You don't have to present on it at a conference about the economic world or anything. You can present on it at a technical conference, a local technical conference or something else, or a meetup like this. And then you're not only showing how you did it, but you're also showing this great thing that you learned, or it's something that you did really cool about it. So that gives you a passion project that really makes a difference for what you do. Here in Utah, we have a thing called the Open Data Portal. It's called the opendata.utah.gov. I don't know if there's one around you or anything else, but basically they publish all of Utah's data on safety and air quality and jobs and health. And so let's say somebody wanted to say, well, how likely is it that people are getting fired or something else, or what's the likeliness that these jobs are coming in? You could actually pull down Excel sheets and SQL files and everything else, and they'll just let you play with them. And you can have all the data and you can play with it all you want. There's tons and tons of open resources out there that's just data. That's just ask yourself a question and you can solve it with it somewhere.
Are we still recording?
Yeah, we are.
So I have a follow-up question for Laura, but it's like getting into her personal life. So maybe turn off the recording and then I can ask her.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hold on, we'll go ahead and stop. We'll stop recording.
Yeah.